Not the Footy Show.
Now, before I ask each of these boys to whisper their secret, let me say that I know that long after I have retired and I look back on this show, the memory of this secret will always be one of the brightest ones in my whole entire time.
Oh, have we got secrets? I'll tell them that much. Welcome to the Recruitment Whisperers, not the Footy Show. Forward sizzle.
So you're going to have to go.
The only way I lose his job for mine is if... G'day, everyone. Welcome to episode 271 of Not the Footy Show. I'm Warrick Nicolson. Robb Cox is across the screen from me. He's on the YouTube. Mate, the Recruitment Whisperers has been so popular that you've bowed to public demand and you've put your face, back on the tube. What's going on?
I don't know, mate. I guess with you whinging about it and crying about it, and can we please do YouTube? We'll keep the 60 people happy that are watching us on
That's
YouTube.
That's what we're after. This is Recruitment Whisperers number 5. It's just been flying. It's been flying so much, Cocksmith, that you are really angry with the way Fox Sports are just capitalising on our IP.
Yeah, well, they've never ever called themselves Transfer Whisperers before, or the Transfer Whisper, and all of a sudden, the week after we come out with Recruitment Whisperers, they're on it.
They are.
They
You
use
have
our
to get
IP.
straight to the big one. And the big one, it's not John Bateman to the Tigers. It's not Ruben Garrick re-signing with Manly.
No.
Who
It's
is it?
Billy Walters extending a year at the Broncos.
2 years. 2 years, mate. 2 years.
Oh,
I
sorry.
did
there you
enjoy.
go. There's a gift.
They put a tweet out and said Billy Walters, he's Brisbane through and through. Except for the fact he didn't always play for Brisbane and couldn't get a contract at Brisbane.
Yeah, except for when his dad wasn't there, they didn't want a bar of him.
He was at Melbourne.
So he went to
the
the
Tigers.
Storm and the Tigers. Yeah.
Anyway, that's not the big story. The big story is Dylan Brown is now a free agent for 2024. People can talk to him. But I just want to kick off the Dylan Brown linking to everybody because, quite frankly, every club should be going after a 22-year-old 5'8" who actually is good. I just want to read what his manager told the Telegraph/Zero Tackle was today or yesterday. He said, once Dylan returns from his break at the World Cup, we will sit down and discuss his future. As suggested in the media, if other clubs, including the Warriors, Dolphins or Titans, are interested and are wishing to put their position forward to Dylan, then we will sit down and consider all options. There is no doubt that he's happy at Parramatta. Dylan has had a great relationship with everyone at the club and it would take a massive deal to pull him out. The reality is Dylan is a different individual. He walks to the beat of his own drum. Dylan's a cool customer. He isn't getting carried away with the media hype, despite how much I say about him. Sorry, that wasn't part of the deal. We're parking the contract issue for now, and we'll pick it up again when his football commitments end at the end of the World Cup. Dylan Brown is absolutely positively for sale to the highest bidder. That's how I read it, Cocksmith.
100%. Yeah, it's time for a payday. It's time to count the money or show him the money, as they say. Yeah, and look, I would not be surprised at all if the Dolphins get him. Because let's be honest, the Dolphins, with all due respect to the players that they've signed, they don't really have a big signing yet.
No,
they don't have anyone. They missed out on a few of them. I think I honestly think their biggest signing to date is the young halfback that they nicked off of Penrith.
Sullivan.
Because he was. No. The other one. Isn't it the other one that went there?
Oh,
Katoa?
the young fella, the guy who's playing 5'8" for Tonga, Katoa.
Yeah. I think there's massive raps on him from juniors all the way up until the moment he signed for Dolphins. I think in a year or so, 18 months, we're going to be talking about him. But I think Sullivan was a good signing too, mate. I think it was they need a bit of an old head at halfback to begin with, and he's proven this year that he can play with the best of them, really.
So the Katoa is a 5'8", which is the interesting part with the Dylan Brown thing, because Dylan Brown's a 5'8". He's not a halfback.
Correct.
And as Brad Arthur found out, he's not a centre if you've got Jake Arthur playing 6 instead. Parramatta can't afford to lose him, but those comments from Chris Orr, who's the manager, are just definitive. It's show me the money, and the Dolphins will have that money. Problem is, if they've got Katara in 6, and as you say, he's 18 months away, well, that's the time frame for Brown if he joined them. So would the Dolphins move aside the young kid, because he looks like a 5'8" from what I've seen at the World Cup. He doesn't look like a half.
I think he can play a bit of both, mate. I think we came through the juniors playing both. So I think the big reason why Penrith let go of him is because they knew that for the next 5 years at least, Cleary's going to be there, and unless there's an injury or something untoward happens, he's cemented in that spot. And there wasn't much that Penrith could offer him. They can't offer another halfback much more than 200 grand to stay there when they're paying their marquee bloke 1.2, 1.3 to stay there. So I think he can play both. It's interesting. It's interesting. Like the Dolphins team haven't signed anyone yet, but there's a lot of interest around it because they haven't signed anyone. People are waiting with a bated breath that, what's going to happen? Who are they going to sign? They're going to get someone. We just don't know who yet. And Dylan Brown could be the one.
Can I just float this name? And it's because we know how this club operates. When the best fish is out there that they haven't already had, they tend to go pretty hard at him. You think of the club I'm talking about?
Roosters?
Mm-hmm. Luke Keary's off contract at the end of 2024. He's on a big deal. Massive coin.
Well, it'll clear up some money because
they're the ones that
he's probably on 800 or 900 grand there. So
there's a like for like salary there. If Dylan Brown wants $1 million, which you probably end up getting, the Roosters are the kind of team that can make it happen. They can move on from players. They can move things around. There's chat that JWH is going to take an early retirement nest egg over in Catalans. There's another sort of 400 to 500 off the books. It's doable, and this is the frustration / beauty of a November 1 new season. You can talk to them 12 months out stuff. Is that poor old Luke Keary is probably sitting there just finishing he's finished his World Cup for Ireland, going, I'll have a nice off season, and now he's going to be sitting there through speculation about the people who are going to replace him. And I'm not breaking any news here. This is what's going to happen. It's going to be people putting 2 and 2 together and going, Keary's out the door, and they're going to go after Dylan Brown with all guns blazing because he's exactly the kind of player that looks like he'd fit next to a Sam Walker.
Yeah, well, like you say, he's definitely not a halfback. He's more in the Jack Whiten mould of a 5'8". He's a borderline centre, but he's probably a better 6 than he is 7, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So, mate. Look, I didn't really consider the Roosters, although I should have, because, like you say, whenever there's a player on the market, they're looking, and especially if they're a decent player, which Dylan Brown certainly is. So
22. Luke Keary's 30.
Yeah.
Mark it down, kids. There'll be a lot of other teams that will go after him, but there's 2 clubs for you, obviously the Dolphins, and I'm going to go with the Roosters as the other one. I love him at Canberra. It's just not going to happen. The big thing for Canberra is whether they can re-sign Jack Whiten, who also isn't exactly a junior player anymore. Let's get to the other signings that are going around the place, Cocksmith, and there's a big one that's been not confirmed yet by the player, not by the clubs involved, but the Channel 9 Mole has pretty good ties to Timmy Sheens, so I'm sure the conversations are already happening or have happened. John Bateman to the West Tigers. I probably am not the best person to talk about this because of what he did to the Raiders. He was outstanding for us on the field. Outstanding. His winning percentage with us was 75% in like 29 games in 2 years. That's transformative. It really is. Problem with old Bateman was we paid a couple of $100,000 to get him to play over here for us, then had to pay him a contract. And then the week of the grand final in the first year of his deal, he said, I want a new deal. And pretty much the only way he would have got away with that is if Canberra had won the grand final with the supporters, because we sort of went, we're paying him massive anyway. We've done a transfer fee and now you want more cash. He then didn't get a shoulder operation, I think it was, until end of January, and then missed the first part of the season. We've covered all this on Not the Footy Show before. So I'm probably not the best person to discuss the merits of signing one Jay Bateman, but you haven't got this emotional attachment. Are the Tigers doing the right thing?
Well, I think Tigers are doing the right thing in as much as that they're looking for players to make a difference. You know, they're not just trying to fill their roster. They're actually looking for players that can be game changers and can make a difference. So I think they are. The bit that worries me about Bateman is, and I've said this before on the podcast, you know, if you want to know what someone's going to do in the future, look at what they've done in the past. And I reckon that's around about 80 to 90% accurate. If, you know, there's a little life lesson for the folks out there. If you want to know what someone's going to do to you, if you know them, look at what they've done in the past to people, and generally that's what you'll get. So, look, I'm not saying that Bateman will come over here and then ask for an upgrade and then not get a shoulder done until January. But he's done that before, and who's to say he's not going to do something similar again? I hope he doesn't, because I think if he comes over and he's fair income and he plays like he did when he was over here for Canberra, I think he'd be a great addition to the Tigers team.
The question for the Tigers is, are you willing to burn the transfer fee? Which will be the second big transfer fee that Johnny Booster Bateman has put up for Wigan in the space of 3 seasons. And do you think he's going to last? He's 30 years old, I think. He signed to a 3-year deal.
29, but he'll be 30 next year, yeah.
He signed to a 3-year deal. That means you're looking at, is he coming back from, you know, the off-season as 31, 32, saying I want another 3 years? Are you going to pay him that?
Well, yeah. I mean,
go back to England
and not come back, because apparently he was really homesick before. So
that's what he said.
Yeah. So look, I'm not sure, mate. It is a risk. 30 years old for 3 years. Are you going to get that last year out of him? You can pretty much guarantee you're going to get 1 year out of him.
Tim Sheens doesn't care, by the way. He's only in charge for a year or two. He wants a good team as he can.
Yeah, that's right. But look, I think he is the right kind of player. Whether he personally is the right player, but he's the right kind of player. And I understand they're also possibly looking at Nathan Brown. And
that was my segue.
Klemmer and or Frizzell.
Do you go Bateman for 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 years, or do you sign Nathan Brown and David Klemmer? If you had to go one or the other, like a combo of those two.
Yeah, I'd like to think they can get them all. I'd like to think they can get them all. If they offload Senior Brooks, I think they can get them all for 2 years each. You know, they're going to get Bateman for 3, but I think the other players could probably come on board for 2 years. Because look, Nathan Brown doesn't really have too many options at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to be probably a $300,000 player ish. And Klemmer is probably going to be fairly similar, maybe just a little bit more.
I think Klemmer will still get paid. He's still in that zone, because I think he'd go to England if they weren't paying enough money up here in Australia.
But the England salary cap isn't that great, and they're only allowed 1 or 2. Is it 2 imports per team?
I'm not sure, to be honest, where it is, but I did note that Matt Pryor did retire at Rhymes, and he would have been on a decent coin over there. There's another opening, I guess, what I'm saying, overseas in that market. The other name that is out there, and we did talk about him 2 weeks ago, is Tyson Frizzell. I think that would be a mistake if you're the Tigers, though. I think he's busted. I think.
I think he might be a little too much done.
He can join a contender maybe in that role, but I don't think he's someone you can go, be on that edge for 2 years and get value for money. Whereas I think if you go with 2 forwards like Brown and Klemmer in the middle, that's where they need them. They need them really badly. They need edge as well. But if I had to pick between the two in terms of resetting your club a little bit, if the Tigers were on the verge of maybe challenging for a comp, I'd go Bateman in a heartbeat. I just don't think they're at that stage. And I'd prefer to see shore up the middle with the Brown and Klemmer combo, if I had to choose between the 2 options.
On Frizzell, do you bring Frizzell? I mean, do you bring Frizzell for 1 year if you can, and get him to, rub off on because he's a hard worker and he's a pro. And he has, other than Newcastle, he's been a bit of a game changer where he's gone before, or where he's been before, which he was good at Cronulla. Yeah. And at St George, he was there probably for a little bit too long. But I think all of those players are great additions, because you start to think, who have the Tigers got? They got Offa Gowie. Who else they got as far as the back row goes?
They're the other two big signings.
Okay.
They do have Sean Bloor.
Who's there?
Sean Bloor's coming back
Sean
from a knee reco, and I liked him, but it's 2 knee recos I think he's had. So you can't rely on him coming back to the player that he was beforehand, or potentially the player he was beforehand. So that's a risk.
Potentially.
But my issue in signing Frizzell is you put a massive roadblock in front of a Bloor, and I think that's I don't know if that's worth it. Whereas I think there is openings in the middle with the Brown.
Do you put a roadblock in front of Bloor, or do you put someone in there who can show him the ropes a bit more? Maybe someone that can help him along the way. Like that could be I think Frizzell's next contract will be his last. And maybe he could take on some kind of a mentor role at the Tigers, for a year.
The other place I thought of for Frizzell, maybe Manly. DCE wants to try and win another comp before he's finished. Anywho, we'll get to Manly and what they've just done as well, which is interesting. But there's another signing for the Tigers. They've signed a Randwick rugby player. I just saw it hit Twitter just a bit earlier, called Ben Houston. Okay. Apparently he's a big unit, big lock, sort of second row kind of guy who wants to have a crack at rugby league. So a train and trial deal for him. Liam Martin has, by reports, re-signed for a 1-year extension with the Panthers. Are you interested about the fact it's only 1 year? What does that mean to you?
Well, it could mean a bunch of things. Look, it could mean that he's waiting for another club to clear the decks a little bit, so that they've got a big slice. It could mean that he just wanted to get that it's settled for a year, come back, really consolidate next year, and look at what his options are. But I'd suggest it's probably the former. I think there might be a whisper, and I don't know which club it is, but there might be a whisper where someone has said, look, we'd really like you, but we just can't afford you at the moment. There might be a number of clubs that have indicated that they'd really like him. Can't afford him right now. But if they're looking more for the year after, that it could be somewhere in the $500,000-$700,000 range.
Bulldogs. Gus is putting the band back together. He wants all the Bulldogs, all the Panther juniors that he had coming through. Next thing you know, Dylan Edwards will be at the Bulldogs.
So what do we got there at the moment? Kickout, but Appy, and even though I don't know, Appy's the guy. Marnie went. Marnie. But who out of the Penrith team is there? Is it just Burton and Kickout?
I think so, because Hetherington's moved on.
Yeah. So maybe he is looking for another couple.
Oh, hey, if you've built it and it's worked, why wouldn't you go after him? Just saying.
Absolutely.
Let's get to the big signing for Manly. I don't get this one, Cocksmith. I don't get the money. There was no doubt that Ruben Garrick did statistically a pretty good job for Manly at fullback, filling in for Tommy Turbo. He did. Yep. He had good run meters. He had a good motor. Still kicked his goals. But the fact is, at the back end of last year, what did Manly not do?
What did they not do? They didn't win games.
And who was at fullback?
Well, correct. I don't know if the fullback's going to change that much, to be perfectly fair.
Well, that's my point, though. If you want the fullback money, which is obviously what he's pushed for because of his ability to fill in for Tommy, you want the results. There was still Kieran Foran there. DCE was still there. The fact was the $1.1 million fullback wasn't. So explain to me this. You got a guy on 300 to 400, probably was what Garrick would have been on. And he's a goal-kicking winger. Yep. They're useful. Yep. They are useful. But there are some teams that don't need a goal-kicking winger because they've got a goal-kicking halfback, they've got a goal-kicking fullback, whatever. And he comes to you and he says, I want fullback money because I played fullback there for 20 games in the last 3 years. And you go, well, no. He goes, I'm going to get my fullback money elsewhere. So he goes and lines up Knights. And they say, well, Kalen Ponga never plays for us. So, come play fullback for us. We'll pay you big money. Then he goes back to Manly and they say, well, we probably can't give you big fullback money, but I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give you $600K and we'll play you at centre, but you'll be there just in case Tommy doesn't get through the season. So you're investing $1.7 million on a winger on the hope that he might be able to fill in for your $1.1 million fullback. It makes no sense to me at all, Cocksmith. You can find wingers who can play for $150K. Taylor May at the Panthers. You can find these guys. You don't need to pay $600,000 to a guy who kicks goals, can't tackle, who's now going to the centres, and is there as a backup for your fullback who you're paying all the money to. This one does my head in. I don't get it.
Yeah, look, we did exchange some texts about this during the week, and I think I might have said to you that if they're paying more than 300 or 400, then they're paying overs. And if the talk is 600, I think they've definitely paid overs, because when Tommy comes back, he's not playing fullback. Now, people will argue and say, yeah, but Tommy's only played 18 games in the last 2 years or whatever the number is. I can't remember it. But, and you could well be right, but sometimes you've got to let them players go.
Yeah.
You just got to let them go, and you've got to fashion another player into that kind of a role. I mean, there's another Trebojevic that's a centre fullback that, maybe that they could have put a little bit more into. I don't know.
They've got a fullback option
so
back up anyway, Cooler.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right.
I've held this little ace back on my sleeve because I don't get it. It's just, and you're also doing one thing that I really hate, Cocksmith, and that's you're pulling a curtain down on the Morgan Harper, Brad Parker Centre era at Manly.
You don't like that?
Oh, that's the only upside of this whole deal for Manly, is it means.
Oh, you do like it.
One of those two won't be in first grade this year. You wouldn't think.
Maybe. Don't be surprised to see. Average. Don't be surprised to see Garrick back on the wing, mate.
Oh,
telling you
stunning.
now.
So pay a $600,000 winger. All right.
Maybe.
And not named Josh Adokar. There's a couple other signings for Manly. Cooper Johns is apparently the guy that they've brought in as the backup half in there. I guess if you're not convinced that Josh Schuster is going to end up being fit enough to play 5'8", and you got to leave him in the back row, is this the idea, bringing Cooper Johns?
Yeah, look, I don't know if Cooper Johns is a long time number 6. I would have thought that he's a 7. Yeah, mate. I look, I can't really think of who else they've got there that could play 5'8". Maybe Ruben Garrett can play 5'8".
Well, Zach Fulton's also re-signed for a couple of years. I don't think he's a 5'8".
I think he's a lock, isn't he?
He's a lock. Sean Kepi for another 2. And the other name that was floated, it was a couple of weeks ago, but it's been floated again, is that that Marty Tapau contract, that money that they have now, having not re-signed him, might go to one T. Flegler from the Broncos for 24. He's on a massive deal at Brisbane. I don't understand why, because you match him up against a Payne Haas or a Fafita, who were his contemporaries coming through, and you went, look, he's got some ability, but he's not in their class. But the chat is that he's on massive coin already. I don't know. You probably do need something Manly up front, but I don't know if Flegler's your dude.
Yeah. Look, I think I'm not sure what the money that Marty is on, but these days he's starting most of the games off the bench. So he's not really, I don't know how much bang for buck you get out of a bench front rower. I don't think it's the same as a starting front rower. In saying that, I still think Marty's got something to offer. And I think for a team, we spoke about this 1 or 2 episodes ago. I think for a team like the Tigers, he'd probably be good, But yeah, I'm with you a bit. I'm not sure Flegler's the guy. And if they're going to pay him massive dollars, I'm pretty certain he's not the guy. I would have thought that someone like Flegler might be on 400, and that would probably be about it. But if it's more than that, well, look, maybe they can stretch the salary cap. Maybe they've been taking lessons off their neighbours over in the east, and they can do something.
Maybe they have. This is also the first contract. Well, Garrett contract's the first one post Desi Hasler. And remember, he was the one that controlled that salary cap over there with an iron.
Who's doing their recruitment now? I mean,
Tony Mestrov he used to play first grade. I think South and Manly he played for. Tony Mestrov's the dude who's the CEO over there, so he'd be taking care of business, as it were. So they'd be looking to make some splashes for Supercoach Seabold's new deal.
Do you think Silvertongue has approved these signings?
I hope so. And it'd be interesting to see whether he had a good relationship with Flegler or not, because he barely played him when he was up there. Blakely didn't
Or
get on the
has-
field until after Supercoach Seabold left.
Mm.
Just saying.
Or has Monsieur Mestrov gone off piste and just signed whoever the hell he wanted to?
I'll tell you what.
For whatever
like
price he
golden
wanted.
honey, those words, Cocksmith, out of your mouth. Did I mention Billy Walters' 2-year deal? I did. And Hayes Perham apparently has got a deal with the Bulldogs, which is interesting. Final thing on Recruitment Whisperers, we'll wrap it up because we've got some World Cup chat to do very, very shortly. The quarterfinals on the way. Don't want to spend much time on this, but I'm concerned for one, Abdo, because there's a news report out today, Cocksmith, that because the collective bargaining agreement has not been signed and there's no confirmation on what the salary cap is for next season, or officially this season now, given that November 1 is the start of the new rugby league season, that some big names, and you can pretty much mark down the chairmen that are doing this, jumping over Andrew Abdo's head because they believe that he won't do anything or can't do anything without asking PVL how high he should jump. Are you concerned about old Abdo's position if this is where it's got to now?
Look, if this is true, this is quite large because, you would, as a CEO of the NRL, the club bosses don't really have anywhere else to go but the CEO. And if that doesn't happen, they've got to be able to speak to somebody. They've got to be able to liaise with somebody that isn't a middle management person. So you're looking for the top of the tree as far as the day-to-day running of the NRL goes. And if he's unavailable, or if he's making himself unavailable because and if that's all true, that's big, and something needs to be done about that. But unfortunately, if it's true, Abdo's hands are tied, and then this is where the commission needs to come in and needs to say, look, this isn't good. This doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good. So who's running the show day to day?
Yeah,
who's running the show?
I got a theory.
Go on, hit me.
A good theory.
Yeah.
What has been very, very big? That's a clue for you in the Sydney sporting sphere for the last month or so.
What has been big?
Big.
You're speaking in riddles. Go on.
I love a bit of riddle. The Everest. PVL's baby.
Oh, you think he's been preoccupied?
Well, he's part-time Volandis. He's been busy with his horse racing. And I'm not even really being that facetious here. He has been. We've got no CBA. We've got no salary cap for next year. He's been busy. So he's been looking after his main interest, which is horse racing. People, that's his job. That's what he does. And then when he feels like getting his back scratched and do a bit of an itch or do something in the rugby league, he walks into it. And this is why Abdo is in a tough spot. He can't do anything without PVL's okay. That's the whole reason that they went with this model, was that it allowed PVL to be part-time and Abdo would take care of things as they were going day to day. I'm going to read you the quote that News Corp put out. All right, ready?
Yeah.
We've gone as far as we can with Andrew Abdo. Somebody has to get to Peter Volandis. The clubs think Andrew can't do any more with the finances unless Peter intervenes. As you say, telling. Very telling. And here's Brian Fletcher, the Panthers CEO, okay? We have budgets to complete and players to sign, so we need this to be done ASAP. You'd think it was a matter of need that needed a bit of urgency, but it doesn't seem to be getting that. It would be nice to know where we're going.
And look, he's got a point, mate. I mean, we're now in the transfer window, the window where players can negotiate, but clubs don't know what their salary cap is. So, is the salary cap $1 million more? Is it $500,000 more? Is it 1.4? And they're big differences. The difference between $500,000 and 1.4 is 2 to 3 players. Or it could be 4 to 5 players, depending on what players you're looking for. So, look, Brian Fletcher has definitely got a point there, and you could be onto something as well. It could be the fact that Peter Volandis has been busy and sidetracked with his main job. Who knows? But what I do know is that if they've got someone quoting about it, then it's more than one CEO that's yelping about this. So there
CEOs
must
and
be
chairman.
some facts.
Yep, and there's some big ones
There must-
that have some clout over there in Clubland. Well, that's the podcast, Cocksmith. I will say this though,
Beautiful.
Abdo and PVL, they'll have some time on the plane to the World Cup to talk about all the things that need to be done, I'm sure. Although
That's if we make the final, mate.
no, interesting to see whether Abdo ends up the pointy end of the plane or not, or he just gets messages sent down the aisleway back to economy class. That's the episode. That's 271. That's the Recruitment Whisperers number 5. I've been Warrick Nicolson. That's been Robb Cox. I hope you've enjoyed another walk down the transfer whispers lane. Is that what we're calling it? We're going to change it. Do you want to change it? Do you want to change our name and just completely use Fox Sports' SEO to our advantage?
No, shan't be doing that, mate. That's not
Where's
copyright.
this theme song I was promised?
Yeah, I'm still working on it, mate. Still working. I've been on holidays. I've been on holidays for a week. Noosa. It was lovely.
We'll find out about your holidays and the Rugby League World Cup quarterfinal. Sorry, the next episode 272. Take us out, Cocksmith.
Talk to you soon, mate. Pepsi.
Off the Footy Show.
You've been sleeping over there?
Pepsi.